They called it the Little Paris of the Midwest, a stretch of mansions so grand that Detroit's Millionaires Row rivaled anything in America. Today, empty lots sit where ballrooms once glittered. But something unexpected is now unfolding in Brush Park, and whether it's a genuine revival or the neighborhood's final act depends on a story that started with one man's audacious vision in 1854. In 1854, Edmund Askin Brush stood at the edge of his family's old ribbon farm and imagined something radically new for Detroit. He drew up a plat map that divided the land into long, narrow lots, each one stretching away from Woodward Avenue. But this was no ordinary subdivision. Every parcel came with strict covenants. Only grand, costly homes of brick or stone could be built, set well back from the street, with ornamental cornices and carriage houses tucked discreetly behind. The rules were precise. No wooden facades, no crowded rows. Every block would project a unified, elegant face to the world. Brush named the streets after his own family: Alfred, Adelaide, Edmund, staking a personal claim on the future of the city. He promoted the district in bold language, running 1857 newspaper ads that promised a neighborhood of the finest mansions, comparable to those of the European capitals. The phrase, "Little Paris of the Midwest," appeared in print for the first time, conjuring images of tree-lined boulevards and cultured society transplanted from France to Michigan. The original plat, still preserved in the Burton Historical Collection, reveals a vision of order and grandeur: 22 city blocks bounded by Mack, Woodward, Beaubien, and what would later become the Fisher Freeway. From the outset, Brush Park was engineered to be more than a place to live. It was a statement about what Detroit could become. Subscribe for more stories that uncover the hidden history of America's great cities. Ornate stone mansions rose along Alfred and Edmund, each one a statement in brick, marble, and ambition. Here, the city's new millionaires competed not just in fortune but in architecture. Gothic Revival homes showed off pointed arches and carved tracery, while Italianate villas boasted bracketed cornices and tall, slender windows. The Second Empire style, with its distinctive mansard roofs and elaborate dormers, crowned the most coveted addresses. The Ransom Gillis House stood out with its Venetian-inspired turret and intricate stonework, a masterpiece by Henry T. Brush and George D. Mason. Nearby, the Hudson family's residence at 124 Alfred Street reflected the commercial might behind Detroit's legendary department store. The Whitneys, whose Queen Anne mansion glowed with stained glass and hand-carved wood, hosted lavish balls that filled society pages. Carriages lined the boulevards, gaslights flickered at dusk, and the air carried the sound of string quartets drifting from open windows. Churches and private schools anchored the social calendar, while every block displayed a different flourish: cast iron balconies, marble steps, copper finials. This was the Detroit the world envied, a place of taste, power, and restless invention. Subscribe for more stories that bring America's forgotten grandeur to life. By the 19-teens, a new force was reshaping Brush Park, not a single architect or city planner, but the automobile itself. Detroit's streets filled with the rumble of engines, and the city's wealthy families discovered a freedom their carriages never offered. Between 1915 and 1925, automobile ownership in Detroit exploded, with registrations jumping from a few thousand to over 350,000. The grand homes of Millionaires Row, once symbols of rootedness and permanence, suddenly seemed like burdens. The city directories from the early 1920s tell the story in stark terms. Names that once filled society pages vanished, replaced by listings for boarding houses and rental rooms. The Butler Mansion on Alfred Street stands as a turning point. In 1922, its carved doors opened not to a single family, but to 10 separate tenants, auto workers, shop clerks, and newly arrived laborers. The city's permit records and health inspections from that year document the change. 10 rooms carved out of what had been one of the district's most refined homes, complaints of overcrowding, and the first whispers of fire hazards. This was not just a loss of privacy or status, it was the unraveling of a social fabric. With each car that rolled out of the city's factories, the distance between wealth and place grew wider. Mansions that once hosted balls and garden parties grew silent. their halls echoing with the footsteps of strangers. Maintenance slipped. Ornate cornices rusted, slate roofs leaked, and the careful order imagined by Edmund Brush gave way to a patchwork of quick fixes and neglect. The age of mobility had begun, and with it, the slow erosion of Millionaires Row. Subscribe for more true stories of America's lost grandeur. The southern edge of Brush Park bears scars that never quite healed. In the 1950s, the city carved the Fisher Freeway, now I-75, straight through the neighborhood, bulldozing entire blocks of historic mansions and splitting the district from downtown. Permit records from 1961 and 1962 document the demolition of at least a dozen homes, their addresses now erased by concrete ramps and overpasses. Where tree-lined boulevards once carried carriages and promenaders, traffic now roared past vacant lots and crumbling facades. The destruction didn't stop with the freeway. In June 1975, fire department logs recorded a blaze on Edmund Place that consumed 3 neighboring mansions in a single night. Flames gutted the interiors, leaving only blackened shells behind. 4 years later, in 1979, another fire swept through the Lubin apartment building, a converted Victorian, collapsing its roof and scattering its bricks across the street. Police reports listed the 1975 fire as arson. The 1979 incident was ruled accidental, but both underscored just how vulnerable the abandoned and subdivided homes had become. Insurance claims soared, and vacancy rates on some blocks jumped from 30 to over 70% within 2 years. By the early 1980s, entire stretches of Millionaires Row stood empty, windows boarded or broken, marble steps choked with weeds. The grandeur imagined by Edmund Brush seemed lost to smoke, asphalt, and neglect. Subscribe for more stories that reveal the hidden histories behind America's changing cities. The comeback of Brush Park began with a promise and a price tag few thought possible. $70 million, pooled from city bonds, federal tax credits, and private equity. This was not just a facelift, but an engine designed to stabilize, restore, and revive a neighborhood that had become shorthand for loss. At the heart of the plan stood the Ransom Gillis House, a battered survivor with boarded windows and a missing turret, chosen to prove that even the most forlorn relic could be reborn. The restoration, launched in 2015, drew on a mix of public and private funds, with $3.2 million devoted to the Gillis project alone. Nicole Curtis, already known for her meticulous work on historic homes, became the public face of the effort. She insisted on lime-based mortar for the brickwork, sourced period-correct pine for the ornate brackets, and worked with Detroit artisans to recreate stained glass that had not caught sunlight in half a century. The project's progress played out in living rooms across America. When Rehab Addict aired the Gillis restoration, 1.2 million viewers tuned in to watch a structure once written off as beyond repair regain its former dignity. The show's reach was more than just ratings. It drew new investors, inspired other preservationists, and made the Gillis House a symbol of Detroit's ability to rescue its own history. Behind the scenes, the city's stabilization plan covered more than just one mansion. Contractors were required to hire Detroit residents for half the labor, and every invoice, from custom millwork to masonry repointing, was scrutinized by city planners and preservationists alike. The Gillis House, once a cautionary tale, had become a showcase, proof that craft, money, and media attention could work together to pull a piece of the past into the present. Subscribe for more stories that reveal the fight to save America's lost grandeur. A walk through Brush Park today reveals a neighborhood in flux, caught between preservation and pressure. The city's $70 million stabilization plan delivered 240 new mixed-income homes, with 20% reserved as affordable units, an attempt to hold the door open for longtime Detroiters as investment floods in. Assessor tables show that property values here have soared, but so have rents. A 2024 study from the Michigan State Housing Development Authority found that 38% of renters in Brush Park have faced steep rent hikes or eviction notices since 2018. For many, the promise of revival comes with the threat of being priced out. Community advocates point to the 2019 founding of the Brush Park Community Land Trust as a safeguard. The Community Land Trust owns 3 historic lots, securing them under 99-year leases that cap resale prices and keep homes permanently affordable. Its bylaws, filed with the state, give residents a direct say in how land is managed, an effort to ensure that the benefits of restoration are shared, not hoarded. Still, the numbers tell a complicated story. For every affordable apartment created, market rate units multiply, and the influx of new residents, many drawn by the district's revived glamour, adds to the tension. Brush Park's comeback has winners, but also warnings. The balance between historic grandeur and inclusive renewal remains fragile, shaped by policy, advocacy, and the lived experience of those who call these streets home. Subscribe for more stories that reveal the fight for equity in America's changing cities. Beneath Brush Park's fading grandeur, echoes of candlelit galas and carriage wheels still haunt the streets Edmund Brush once dreamed into elegance. The automobile shattered that world, but the Ransom Gillis House and new restorations flicker with hope. Detroit's memory stands at a crossroads. Its next chapter is still unwritten. Subscribe for more stories like this.